Attention students, please hide under your desks immediately. Attention students and staff, please hide under your desks immediately. This is not a drill. Get under your desks right now. My immediate thought was, oh my God, it's a shooting. We're all dead. I threw myself under the desk, but I had no idea how wrong I was, or how much worse it would get. For the first few minutes, it was dead silent. I strained my ears to listen for gunshots, screaming, anything indicating what was happening. Nothing. Not even the sounds of footsteps in the hall. I'd never been in the school when it was that quiet, and I never want to be again after what happened. But as minutes ticked by, some of the other kids got antsy. It was bound to happen. It started as a quiet murmur, students quietly wondering what was going on or if this was a real roundabout way of having a drill. By saying we weren't having one, I just kept my legs pulled up to my chest. The murmur went to whispers, and then to just flat-out chatter. Nothing was happening after all. And unsurprisingly, it was Riley who finally started acting up. He scooted out from under his desk and got to his feet. "I gotta piss," he announced, much to the giggles and amusement of his comrades. Mr. Arnold poked his head out from his own desk. "Riley, get back under your desk," he ordered. "But I gotta piss," Riley complained as he walked to the door. "I'll be back in a second." Mr. Arnold grumbled before he got out from under his desk to intercept the most well-known of the class clowns. "Riley, get back under your desk." Right as he was scolding him, I noticed a mostly clear liquid oozing from the ceiling tile. Before I could have said anything, it dripped down and splattered right on the top of Mr. Arnold's bald scalp. The pale skin turned red, and Mr. Arnold's eyes popped real wide. His mouth opened, maybe to scream, but I don't think he lasted long enough to scream as the slime ate through the top of his skull and into his brain. His eyes rolled back and he fell to the ground with a thud. His purple button-up shirt was covered with blood. The contents of his head that hadn't been eaten away by the slime spilled across the off-white linoleum, and I found myself thinking, gee, the janitor isn't going to like cleaning that, before it hit me what I'd just seen. My teacher just dropped dead, and his brains were on the floor. The room exploded into panic. Riley apparently really did need to use the bathroom, judging by the fact there was a large wet patch on the front of his jeans. He stood there, frozen, before more clear slime splashed down just an inch from him. He screeched in such a high-pitched tone, it made my ears ring before he dove back under his desk, curling up in a little ball as he gibbered and jabbered about calling 911. Moron. We were in Arnold's class. He always took everyone's phones before the bell rang and told us we could have them back after we left, and then locked them into the top drawer of his desk. There was one or two that had managed to sneak them past him, though, and I could hear them frantically dialing and begging for help. Police, ambulances, freaking anything to just come and save us. Bowen shouted, "Screw this," and bolted for the door, followed by his girlfriend Abby and her bestie Paige. He threw open the door, and a sheet of clear ooze came flooding down from the frame. I flinched, and when I looked I saw Bowen had turned around. He'd not avoided the splash zone. The slime hissed like hot oil as it ate away at his face. His eyes had already turned into milky white slime that dripped down his rapidly dissolving face with the rest of the ooze. He moaned and reached for Abby, who screamed and shoved him away. The slime from his face splashed onto her hands, where it immediately started dissolving away the skin on her palms and fingers. Bowen fell to the ground with a wet smack, while Abby stared at her hands, screaming as one of her pointer fingers went crooked, before it just completely fell off. It landed on the ground and rolled across the floor, stopping right next to me. I vomited. I swallowed most of it down, but that's what did me in. Not seeing my teacher's brains, or Bowen's face melting off, but Abby's finger landing next to me. It was just too much. By the time I spat out what I couldn't swallow, Paige had been the victim of another drip, but it hadn't hit anything vital, just her arm. She scooted under her desk while Abby ran out of the room in hysterics. I don't know what happened to her, but I never saw her again. I would briefly peek out from time to time to look at the ceiling. It seemed to be coming from between those stained panels, like pus dripping from a wound. The ooze that landed closest to me seemed completely innocuous. It had a strong antiseptic smell, sure, but it didn't seem all that dangerous. It didn't bother the tiles. It only seemed to really react to organic material. Cass was having the worst time. She was the tallest girl in the class. I saw tears and snot mingle on her face as she struggled to keep all her limbs under the crude safety of the desk. "Cass, if you have an opening, try to go to Mr. Arnold's desk," I shouted to her. "You'll fit better under there." Cass hiccuped and looked at me. I don't think she even knew my name, but she was grateful for the suggestion. So after a moment, she gulped before she flung herself out of the danger zone and headed for the desk just a few feet away. She almost made it, but she slipped on some of Mr. Arnold's brain matter and went crashing to the ground, where her knee landed in a pile of clear ooze. The pain must have been excruciating, but Cass dragged herself to the teacher's desk before she collapsed, sobbing and wailing. I wanted to apologize for suggesting that in the first place, but she just looked at me with this blank look that made me keep my mouth shut. I heard screams from the other classes, some from the hall. I thought about the kids who were skipping by hiding in the bathrooms. Were they all right? Had they managed to get back to class in time? Or did they just laugh it off or assume they were safer in the bathroom stalls? We stayed in class for hours. It didn't matter how many times Janet called 911. Soon her phone just went dead. My legs cramped up so badly that I nearly gave in and stretched. But the moment I almost did, more ooze splashed next to me. That convinced me to stay balled up. When the doors finally opened and someone in a hazmat suit walked in, I cried like a little baby. The hazmat walked around the room, quietly reassuring us in a quiet voice that it was going to be fine. They were going to get us out of here. More hazmat-suited people walked in, carrying plastic sheets that we had to pull over our heads like blankets. I nearly fell when I got up. Thank God I didn't. I didn't want to face plant into some acidic ooze. As I was led out, I looked back at Cass. She was still alive, pale, but breathing. But her leg was laid out in a way that made me pause. She muttered something about it didn't hurt anymore, and as she was assisted up, her leg remained on the ground. She looked down at where it lay, mottled with acid burns. And the worst part was that she didn't even scream. She just started giggling. I was hurried out of the room, but nothing was worse than hearing her hysterical cackles echo through the halls that were stained with ooze and melted humans that had once been my fellow students and teachers. When I turned to leave, I only caught a glimpse, but I could have sworn I saw a hand lying outside of Mr. Arnold's classroom, wearing that purple long sleeve that he would always wear.